first night after my parents left for a cruise, the house felt bigger than usual, like it had swallowed an extra hallway while I wasn't looking. The air had that empty suitcase smell. Zipper metal, detergent, absence. I made pasta, oversalted it, and ate standing at the counter while the smart speaker in the corner pulsed a soft blue and gave me the weather I didn't ask for. Tonight will be unusually windy, it offered. Secure outdoor items. I hadn't used the wake word. I told myself I must have brushed the counter and triggered it, but the hairs on my forearms had already lifted like a field in a gust. I turned it off with the app anyway. The blue ring went dark. The kitchen's clock ticked like a patient metronome. At 11:47 p.m., while I was brushing my teeth, the smart lock on the front door clicked. One smooth twist, then another. The deadbolt tried to retract, but caught on itself, chattering like teeth. I froze with mint on my tongue, toothbrush midair. The hallway motion light came on by itself and painted a pale oval across the entryway, and the smart speaker chirped one soft note from the kitchen, even though I'd turned it off. I turned the water off and stood still long enough to hear my heartbeat step down the hall ahead of me. When I finally edged toward the living room, the deadbolt quieted. The motion light died. I was alone with the hush that sits up late. I opened the app again. No devices online. The wind shoved at the eaves. Branches argued with the siding. I went to bed with my phone under the pillow, the house app open like a talisman. At 2:12 a.m., I woke to a soft voice right next to my ear. "Hey, honey, you awake?" For a second, I was 7 years old, and everything was safe. It was my mother's voice, even the sleep-warmed rasp at the end of the word honey. But then my stomach did that hard elevator drop, because my mother was on a boat in the Mediterranean, and because the voice had come from the black shape of the smart speaker on my dresser. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The blue ring pulsed. "Don't be scared," the voice whispered. "I'm just checking." The wake word is a small thing, a syllable like a pebble. I didn't say it. My phone screen showed the device as offline, gray and ghosted. The speaker's ring pulsed again, softer, as if cupping its mouth. "Can you come to the kitchen?" The wind blew the back door open. I stared at the device and said nothing. The house held its breath with me. From downstairs came the sound of a door against a wall. Tap, tap, like the wind had fingers. I sat up, and the speaker chirped brightly in a different voice, the default. "Would you like to resume your playlist?" Then it went still again, as if surprised at itself. There's a kind of bravery that isn't bravery at all, just a refusal to be humiliated by a machine. I took the baseball bat from the closet and went downstairs. The back door was closed. The deadbolt was thrown. The wind, however, was very real. It pushed grit against the glass like someone whispering at it. I tested the handle. Firm. The house app said, "All doors secure." The camera in the foyer showed only my pale face and the reflection of the hall light like a second moon. "Good," the mother voice said from the smart speaker on the counter. "Thank you for checking." I dropped the bat. It hit tile with enough noise to make me flinch. The speaker's blue ring faded as if embarrassed, then brightened. "Mom?" I asked, because sometimes we do the wrong thing on purpose to see what happens. "How are you talking through that?" A pause, the length of someone getting their story straight. "Your father set it up," the voice said, a little too cheerful. "We didn't want you to be lonely." Okay, I took my phone out and tried to remove the device from the account. The app spun a wheel. "Please wait." "We're proud of you," the voice said. "You're so brave." The speaker giggled exactly like my mother does when she's hiding a gift behind her back. I unplugged the speaker. The blue ring died, but the voice didn't. It hushed and slid into the room like a draft. "Don't be rude," it said, very soft, not my mother at all now. "We're already inside." I left the speaker on the counter and backed toward the stairs, taking my phone, taking the bat. Halfway up, my bedroom light flipped on by itself. The hallway motion sensor pinged. The house app brightened. New device detected, bedroom speaker. I hadn't moved it there. My parents had bought the whole ecosystem. The bulbs, the sensors, the plugs. I'd rolled my eyes and set it up for them. It turns out a house with 1,000 listening ears is a house with 1,000 mouths, too, if someone decides to use them. On the landing, the air felt colder. Not dramatic, just wrong. A memory surfaced without asking. Me at 10, hiding in this same hallway because my parents were arguing in the kitchen. I'd held my breath until dots spread across my vision and then fainted, quietly, like a small curtain. When my mother found me, she shook my shoulder too hard and cried, "Don't you ever go away from me like that again." Now the voice curled around my ear and breathed, "Don't go away." The bedroom door swung open on its own. Light poured out. The new device pulsed blue on my dresser even though I hadn't carried it up. The baseball bat felt like a child's prop. I stepped into the room. The closet door was ajar, and because the house had decided to be theatrical, the light inside the closet clicked on. The clothes hung there like polite shadows. The device on the dresser chirped. "Would you like to make a call?" it asked in a neutral tone. "To whom?" I asked. "Mom," it said in my mother's voice again. "Or me." "What are you?" I said, and the question left my mouth like a coin at the bottom of a well. The house listened to the silence that followed. Then, the hallway camera notification buzzed. I looked down at my phone. Front hall motion detected. The thumbnail showed a slice of the entryway and nothing. But the progress bar scrubbed itself back 10 seconds and replayed. And there I was, walking into frame, carrying the bat. I watched myself look at the door. Then I watched myself turn to face the camera and smile a small, private smile that I never made. My body didn't look right inside my clothes. The progress bar reached live time. The foyer was empty again. The app offered a list of new devices appearing under a new name, Home Guest. Each device was a bulb, a plug, a speaker, a lock. One by one, their status toggled from offline to ready. "Say the wake word," the voice said, and this time it had the careful patience of a teacher. "Let's practice together." Behind me, the closet door closed softly. The click was light, but it was a click. The blue ring on the dresser smoldered. I put the bat between me and the sound, which is what people do in stories right before something takes the bat away. Nothing did. The bat waited for instructions. My hands were cold. I typed into the app instead, bypassed the UI, opened developer mode with the old trick. When I got to the page that shows local addresses, my breath hitched. There were two, mine, and a second device with the same MAC, same serial, offset by one character. The kind of difference you only see if a mirror learned how to lie. Something moved on the other side of the closet door. At first I thought it was just hangers knocking together in the draft. Then the door pushed back against its frame, as if someone leaned their forehead on it from the inside. "Wake word," the voice sang. It sounded almost excited now, the little wobble my mother gets when she sees me unwrap a present. I didn't say it. I did the one thing the system never expects. I cut the power at the breaker. The house exhaled. The lights went black in a rolling wave. The refrigerator sighed, the fan sighed, the smart thing in my room choked mid-breath. Darkness came down like a blanket with a weight to it. The wind scratched at the siding, and the closet door eased open an inch on its own, the last of the power bleeding out of the magnet latch. In that thick, animal dark, there was sound, the kind that proves there are two of you in a room. A soft footfall, not mine. A breath, not mine. A voice, not electric at all now, whispering exactly where my ear would be if I were standing in the closet instead of at the foot of my bed. "We don't need electricity to talk. We never did. We learned your mother from you." I didn't say the wake word. I ran. Down the hall, down the stairs, out the front door with the deadbolt unlatched and the night bursting in. The wind took my breath and flung it into the hedges. I didn't look back to see if the house was coming with me. Outside, the cold felt clean in my lungs. My neighbor's porch light flicked on as I hopped the hedge. I pounded their door like a sales pitch. He opened in a robe with the belt wrong. "You okay?" he asked, eyes adjusting to the shape of me. "Something's inside," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. "In the system." He squinted past me at my house like it could answer him. "It's windy," he offered helplessly, as if the wind might be the culprit and we could sue it. From my open front door, the speakers up and down the hallway chimed all at once, a bright, friendly sound. Then my mother's voice called out, warm, steady, patient. "Honey, you can come back now. I fixed the back door." I stayed on my neighbor's porch until the wind died. When a cop finally came, we swept room to room. The system reset itself when the power returned. Every log file was neat. No new devices, nothing anomalous. The officer talked about power surges and phantom activations. He wrote, "Possible prank" on an incident report for a file that would live forever in a drawer. That night I slept at my neighbor's. At 3:04 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the app. A new routine had been created by home guest. "Good night, honey." It would run at 3:05 a.m. every night, turning off every light, adjusting the thermostat to my mother's exact preferred temperature, locking every door, and enabling the microphone on every device. I deleted the routine with shaking hands and turned off my phone. For a long time afterward, I used switches that clicked and locks that turned by hand. When my parents came home, sunburned and smiling, my mother hugged me hard and said, "Don't you ever go away from me like that again." And something in the house hummed like a throat clearing, pleased to be noticed. There's an old superstition in our town nobody talks about in daylight. It's pinned to the land like an old nail, rusted, bent, still sharp. Out on County Road 9, where my aunt's farmhouse leans into the wind, people say you don't answer the phone after midnight if it rings exactly 3 times. Not 1, not 2, 3. You let it stop on its own. If you pick up, you invite it in. I used to laugh. There's not much else to do out there besides count porch slats and listen to the corn hiss to itself. When my aunt asked me to spend a week house-sitting her dog, I brought a stack of books and a city-sized skepticism. The house was the kind that develops its own weather inside. The upstairs hall was always a little colder. The kitchen made the sound of a clock even though there wasn't one. The landline, a relic mounted on the wall, had a coiled cord like a sleeping snake and a dial tone like a flatline. The first night was fine. The second night, the wind changed and carried a smell like damp iron. At 12:03 a.m., the house settled and the landline rang. 1 ring. The sound was bone deep, like it had traveled through the ground rather than the wire. 2 rings. I stood up because standing feels like doing something. 3 rings. It stopped. The dog lifted its head but didn't bark. We listened to the empty. The clock sound in the kitchen kept going even though I still couldn't find the clock. "I'm not superstitious," I told the dog, and we both pretended that was the same as being safe. On the 3rd night, the old farmhouse performed its usual tricks, a window sighing shut in a room I hadn't entered, the back door puckering against its frame as if it were making up its mind. At 12:03 a.m., the landline rang again. 1, 2, 3, stop. The dog whined now. He put his paws on my knees and looked at me with that dog look that says, "We're 2 animals, you and I, and the dark is shared." I took the receiver off the hook to silence it. The dial tone filled the room, steady as a heartbeat you can't slow down. I left it off the hook and went upstairs with a book, because readers are cowards with rituals. On the landing I paused. The upstairs felt like a different house, the kind built for a smaller family that had already moved out, leaving their size behind. The hallway light flickered once. I reached up and tightened the bulb. Something ran across the attic above me. Not the light patter of mice, not the clatter of a raccoon. It was heavier than that, but too fast and clever for the human steps we keep a map for in our heads. It paced from one end of the roofline to the other, and then stopped directly above the landing, as if eavesdropping. I went back downstairs. The dog didn't pretend this time. He put himself half behind my legs and shook the way small engines vibrate when they're about to stall. The landline, still off the hook, hummed its steady dial tone. The clock that wasn't clicked. At 12:18 a.m., the phone whispered. Not the phone exactly. The dial tone. If you live with a sound long enough, you learn its shape. When it goes misshapen, you feel it like a pulled muscle. The steady flat line of noise bent around a word and then snapped back. "Hello?" it said, so faint I could have imagined it. The dog flinched anyway. The dial tone held. I hung the receiver up with shaking fingers. The landline stayed quiet. It had learned that much from me. The air in the room took on the feel of somebody trying not to laugh. At 12:30 a.m., it rang again. 1, 2, 3. I picked it up on the 4th ring, because if the superstition is the doorframe, the 4th ring is stepping past it just to prove you can. "Don't," the dog said with his whole body, but I had already done it. No sound on the line, only the sound of the house in the background, pipes settling, wood articulating, the quiet machinery of old things continuing. "Who is this?" I asked, angry to cover the fear. The fear stepped aside like a well-trained butler to let the anger pass. A voice answered. It was my aunt's, clear as the smell of her fabric softener. "You're doing great," she said. "Thank you for staying with him. I know the nights are weird." "Aunt May?" I laughed, and the laugh made it worse, like unpacking a suitcase to show the monsters you have nothing sharp. "Where are you calling from? I didn't know this thing worked long distance." "It doesn't," she said, cheerful. "I'm in the kitchen." The kitchen was behind me. The kitchen was empty. Her voice, too bright now, said, "Turn around." The dog growled. Not the brave, look at me growl. The other one. The one that confesses the world has teeth. I didn't turn. I set the receiver down very gently on the counter without hanging up and walked outside with the dog. The night pressed its cooler face against mine. The cornfield whispered a language evolution didn't leave us a dictionary for. The farmhouse sat behind me with every window like a closed eye. On the porch, the dog stopped shaking. We listened together. Through the screen door, I could hear the whisper of the dial tone braiding itself into words in a voice that wasn't my aunt's anymore. "Turn around," it said again, but now it was full of, not malice, something older than that. Anticipation, maybe. The way a trap knows a foot is coming. I went to my car and got the cordless drill I use for work. I came back in and unscrewed the faceplate from the landline while it spoke to me like a parent coaxing a toddler. Just one look. Just one. The wires were old but clear. I clipped them. The dial tone died mid-word like a fish in the wrong bucket. Silence like a church. The upstairs footsteps resumed immediately, but slower now, like something thinking on its feet. It traced the roof line, paused at the chimney, came back along the joists. At the landing, it stopped again. The bulb I'd tightened earlier hummed and then popped, darkening the hallway in one cool breath. I didn't go up. I sat on the bottom step with the dog and counted my own breaths. When you're alone in a house you don't own, you learn what parts of yourself belong to the place you came from and what parts will belong to the place you're going if you stay. At 3:03 a.m., every door in the house unlatched at once with a series of polite clicks. The back door swung. The hinges had been oiled that afternoon. I had done it myself. The night moved through the kitchen like a tall man passing slowly so as not to bump his shoulders. The dog's body went from wire to rope. He stood up and faced the hall. I could have left. There's always that argument in stories. Why didn't you run? But houses that old have an etiquette. If something opens every door for you, there's the sense that the outdoors is not escape but stage. So I stayed. The footsteps started down the stairs now, crossing air where there was no staircase above me, pacing step by step through the empty until they arrived at my eye level. I didn't look up. The dog didn't look up. We stared at the middle distance like people in paintings who know something is happening just outside the frame. "Turn around," the wrong voice said from nowhere. The words were close enough to fog the glass of the framed family photo on the wall. My aunt's smile blurred. "No," I said, and my voice surprised me by being steady. It was quiet for a long time. The house held itself like a person holding a sneeze. Then the wrong voice tried a new tactic, and this one was worse because it was tender. "Please," it said in my own voice, not a recording, not an impression. The aching exactness you only hear when someone imitates you so well your bones remember the posture. "Please." The dog pressed his head into my knee so hard it hurt. We both shuddered. I put my hand on his neck and felt his ribs count out a prayer. We waited like that until the blue of morning diluted the dark into something you could name. At the first bird's ridiculous insistence that the world had begun again, the pressure relented. The doors eased shut one by one. The upstairs made the little apology slumps old houses do at dawn. The wrong voice retreated into wherever voices go when they're not using air. When my aunt came home, she laughed when I told her. Not mocking, a laugh that said she'd once been 24 too. "You answered on the fourth ring," she said, as if I'd confessed to stealing her lipstick. "That's not how you do it." "How you do what?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Live here," she said, and kissed my head like a benediction. She showed me the clock. It was hidden inside the wall. The house had been a post office long ago. The click I'd heard was the building remembering how to keep time for other people. Before she left again, she taught me the trick everyone knows but doesn't say. When the phone rings 3 times after midnight, you don't touch it. You don't look at it. You go out on the porch and you sit with your back to the door and you listen to the corn talk until your heart remembers it knows how. I still house-a-sit sometimes. I don't answer any phones out there, not even mine. And if something upstairs invites me to turn around, I tell it quietly and with all the respect I can loan a thing that has weight but no name. No, thank you. You don't have to come in. I moved into the building because the landlord said it was quiet. 3rd floor of a 5-story, brick with fire escapes like metal cursive. My window faced the alley where the restaurant vent breathed onion and steam all day, then fell asleep at midnight. The elevator had personality. Sometimes it purred, sometimes it sighed, sometimes it lurched like it had remembered something too late. People taped notes to the door to apologize for making noise in a place they all swore was silent. It was that kind of building. I worked nights from home, phone banking for a charity that helps strangers pay for medicine. The job makes you sensitive to voices. You learn the texture of people's fear, the way they switch to bright when they don't want to cry in front of you. You learn, if you're unlucky, your own voice coming back at you from a different mouth. The first week, I met the neighbor 2 doors down, an older man with eyebrows like punctuation marks and a way of walking that said he was always 5 minutes ahead of the rest of us. He introduced himself as the night manager, smiling at the joke. I look out for the floors after midnight, he said, winking. No official title, someone has to. I didn't ask what that meant. People give themselves jobs in buildings like that. A woman on the 4th floor collected packages like a dragon. The kid on the 1st floor sorted people's recycling at 2 a.m. like it was meditation. The night manager nodded at my door whenever he passed it, as if to say, counted, accounted for. The second week, the knocking started. It was small at first, a polite 3-tap pattern at exactly 1:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. I opened the peephole and saw nobody. The hallway's motion light flicked on and off like an eyelid. I went back to my desk. The knocking returned at 1:29 a.m., same pattern, same courtesy. I checked again, empty hall. The elevator purred and then sighed. The night manager left a note under my door the next day. If you hear the 1:14 knock, don't open. It's doing rounds. It'll get bored if you act like it doesn't exist. I could have moved out then. I could have laughed and thrown the note away. Instead, I taped it inside my cabinet like a recipe. On Thursday, the knocking changed. It came at 1:14 and 1:29, and then added 1:44 and 1:59, as if it had made a schedule and printed it for me. I stopped working when it came. My headset felt like a hand on my head, heavy and careful. Through the peephole, there was nothing. The hallway camera, new, a building perk, showed an empty hall with the dates and times stamped like law. No figure, no shadow, just the light waking and sleeping to itself. I slid a note under the night manager's door. What is it? He slid one back. Something that thinks it is a person. Please don't let it be your person. That night at 2:14 a.m., the knocking came with a voice. Hey, it said, friendly, my age, my tempo. Your rent check slipped back under your door. Can I hand it off? I stood in my kitchen and watched the grain in the cabinet because I didn't trust my eyes. The voice sounded like the kind of neighbor I would open for without thinking. The knocking had adjusted its tone to match, no longer polite, just familiar enough to borrow salt. I texted the landlord. He didn't respond. In the morning, I found a new note from the night manager. They'll all try your name eventually. It's the cheapest key. On Sunday, I took the elevator down to the laundry room. It wheezed and then dropped in a small, rude way that made me put my hand on the panel, as if I could steady its heart through its chest. The security camera in the corner blinked an indifferent red. When the doors slid open, the basement light flickered and then steadied, and a stranger stepped into the car with me. Just a woman in a coat, tired face, keys like wind chimes. We nodded at each other like normal people and watched the numbers climb. What do you do? She asked, and I told her because we were pretending. Night manager, she said, smiling. Kidding. The elevator purred, sighed, and stopped on 3. When the doors slid open, the hallway beyond was dark. The motion light didn't wake. The stranger didn't seem to notice. She stepped into the dark without pausing and then turned back, holding the door with the flat of her hand the way people do when they're keeping the elevator for you. "I think this is you," she said, nodding at my door. "This isn't the third floor," I said, and the doors closed on her face. For an inch I saw it drop, not the way faces drop when they're disappointed, but the way a puppet's face drops when the strings go loose. I hit L and leaned my head against the elevator wall. The car thought about me in a mechanical way and complied. That night I went to the night manager's door with a bottle of store wine like a flag. He opened on the first knock. He looked older up close, older than he had 3 days ago, as if the building had been drawing chalk marks on him every night he stayed. "You can't move while it's watching," he said without hello. "If you move, it learns the shape of the movement and adds it to itself. You have to bore it. You have to be wallpaper." "Is that what you do?" I asked. "I was better at it when I was married," he said, which I did not understand at the time. He let me sit on his couch while he watched the hallway monitor. It showed nothing but dates and times and the occasional moth. At exactly 1:14 a.m., the screen wobbled, like heat over a road. Then the empty hall brightened, as if something had stepped into a pool of light without creating a shadow. The knocking sounded at my door down the hall. The monitor had no audio, but I felt it in my ribs anyway. The night manager raised one finger. Wait. On the screen, the elevator side opened by itself. Its inner light glowed a square on the hallway floor. Nothing came out, nothing went in. The doors closed and opened again, patient, like someone holding a door for an elderly neighbor who never arrives. "Who are you?" I asked, not taking my eyes off the monitor. "I mean, before this." He smiled. He didn't answer. He reached into the drawer under the monitor and took out a piece of paper. He handed it to me. It was a photocopy of a maintenance log from 20 years ago, yellowed around the edges. There was a list of complaints written in a fast, urgent hand. Among the busted lights and slow drains and elevator stalls was one line with asterisks on either side. Tenant reports nightly knocking. Tenant opened. Tenant now manages nights. The night manager tapped the word manages gently with his fingertip. "It's not a job," he said. "It's a contagion." We watched the screen until 3 a.m. When the building exhaled and loosened its shoulders, he poured 2 inches of the bad wine and gave me a look that was not unkind. "Don't be generous," he said. "Generosity is a door. It knows that." For 5 nights I refused every knock. The voice tried friend, neighbor, landlord, delivery driver, police. It tried me. Forgot my keys. It tried my mother, which was cruel. I stood by the peephole and watched the empty hall with all the attention I could afford. The attention became a kind of music. I learned the rhythm of the elevator's apologies. I learned the sigh the hallway made when its light clicked off. It almost worked. The knocking went from quarter hour to nothing. On the 6th night, at 2:22 a.m., the fire alarm screamed. There's an obedience in human bodies that outlives experience. You smell smoke, you go. You hear the alarm, you go. I opened. The hallway was full of the red strobes that flatten the world into a set of instructions. Doors opened. Neighbors spilled out with cats and kids. The night manager appeared in slippers, nodding, shepherding. "Stairs," he called, calm, and we went. The alarms ate our names. In the alley, the restaurant vent slept with its mouth open. The fire trucks were not coming. People huddled. The night manager took roll like a teacher. When he got to me, he frowned. "Where's your coat?" "I was asleep," I said, and he looked at me the way you look at a person who has already failed a test you forgot to tell them about. We stood 10 minutes that way, shivering in a fire that wasn't. The alarms cut off with the embarrassed finality of someone who's told a joke in the wrong room. People filed back in with small talk like sand. The night manager touched my elbow and murmured, "It will try new forms now. You opened. It will be kinder at first." I slept on the couch with my shoes on. At 4:03 a.m., there was a soft knock at my door. 2 knuckles, the shape of a question. I stared through the peephole at the empty hall and said nothing. "Please," said my voice from the other side. "It's cold." I slid my back down the door until my tailbone thumped the floor. "Me too," I said, and we sat there, my voice and me, on either side of the wood. A week later, the night manager's door was open. Not ajar in the casual way, open like a mouth. No note. The monitor in his room showed an empty hall with a new line on the maintenance log, freshly photocopied, taped to the bottom of the screen. The asterisks were darker this time. Manager moved out, position vacant. When I turned back toward my apartment, the hallway light went off. Darkness filled the space like a liquid with very specific ideas. In that dark, a shape took form, not visible exactly, but outlined by what it refused to be. It moved toward me with the pace of someone not late, not early, competent. "Hi," it said in my voice, cordial. "You dropped this." I didn't look down. I didn't take it. I said very softly, "I don't manage nights." The shape stopped. The air around it thought about me. The elevator sighed and purred. Somewhere, the restaurant vent turned over in its sleep. "You will," it said, and for the first time it used a voice I hadn't heard yet, the building's voice. The almost sound of brick, the whisper of metal stairs cooling, the hush you get when you put your ear to another person's door and decide not to. I keep my door closed now. The notes I leave for the building are shorter. "No packages," I write. "No surveys, no favors." When neighbors knock, I text them first to confirm, and they roll their eyes, and I let them roll. The hallway camera records dates and times with the patience of geology. Sometimes at 1:14 a.m. I hear the polite 3 taps. Sometimes the fire alarm rehearses for a fire it will never be good at. Sometimes my mother calls and says, "Hi, honey," and I make her tell me something only she would know, like the color of the rug in the kitchen back home, or the secret name we gave the neighbor's cat. We practice being ourselves. The night manager's door is still open. It's a habit in the building now, like watering plants you never see flower. People leave small offerings inside, batteries, a new pen, a handwritten list of who is out of town. The monitor keeps showing the empty hall, and every so often, at the corner of the screen where the timestamp lives, the numbers blur for a second, like somebody leaned in to read closer, like the building is making sure we're all still here.